The last polish. Elara dipped the worn rag into the tin of polish, the familiar waxy scent rising to meet her. The shoes, her faithful brown Oxfords, were scuffed and faded, their leather softened by countless miles walked. She'd bought them second-hand years ago, and they'd seen her through every job interview, every late-night shift, every hopeful step toward something better. With meticulous care, she worked the polish into the creases, watching the dull brown deepen to a rich, glossy chestnut. Each circular motion was a silent incantation, a hope pressed into the very fabric of the leather. She remembered the sneers from some of the other candidates at previous interviews, the subtle glances down at her footwear, the unspoken judgment. It stung, of course, but it also fueled a quiet fire within her. These shoes, humble as they were, represented her journey, her resilience. They were a testament to every obstacle overcome, every penny saved. Tonight, they needed to be perfect, not for anyone else, but for her own sense of readiness. This interview, with Sterling and company, felt different. It felt like the interview. Finishing with the first shoe, she held it up, admiring the renewed sheen under the dim glow of her bedside lamp. A small, satisfied smile touched her lips. She moved on to the second, her thoughts drifting to her mother. The thought of finally being able to send her more than just a meager sum each month, to relieve some of the endless worry etched into her mother's face, brought a warmth to Elara's chest. A real career, a stable income, not just another stopgap job. This wasn't just about her, it was about them. As the second shoe gleamed, reflecting the faint light, Elara set both carefully on a fresh sheet of newspaper. She closed her eyes, her hands clasped loosely in her lap. No ornate prayers, no grand pronouncements, just a quiet plea from the depths of her heart. "Please," she whispered, the word barely audible, "just give me this chance. Let them see what I can do." It wasn't about luck, not entirely. It was about opportunity, about proving herself, about finally being recognized for her capabilities, not her circumstances. She opened her eyes, feeling a renewed sense of calm. A clear image formed in her mind, her mother smiling, truly smiling, without that underlying current of exhaustion. And herself, sitting at a desk, contributing, making a difference. The office, bright and bustling, filled with purposeful energy. She saw herself thriving, learning, growing. It was a vivid, tangible dream, one that felt within reach, just beyond the polished toes of her old brown shoes. She would walk into that interview tomorrow not just with a resume, but with the weight of her past, the hope for her future, and the unwavering belief in herself, every step of the way. A grand entrance. The taxi idled at the curb, its worn tires a stark contrast to the polished granite beneath. Elara craned her neck, her gaze tracing the ascent of the building before her. It wasn't merely tall, it was a titan of glass and steel, glinting mercilessly under the morning sun. Each pane seemed to reflect the sky with an almost arrogant precision, a silent testament to the power housed within. She swallowed, the knot in her stomach tightening. This was it. The headquarters of Etheria Corporation. A procession of sleek, dark sedans glided past, their tinted windows obscuring the faces within, but not the aura of importance they exuded. Men and women in impeccably tailored suits emerged from these vehicles, their movements fluid and confident, their briefcases gleaming. Elara clutched the strap of her own worn satchel, feeling the familiar comfort of the aged leather, yet acutely aware of its humble presence in this opulent tableau. She took a deep breath, the city air smelling faintly of exhaust and expensive cologne, and stepped out onto the pristine sidewalk. Inside, the lobby was a cavernous expanse of marble and hushed reverence. The ceiling soared, adorned with intricate, almost sculptural lighting fixtures that cast a soft, ethereal glow. A receptionist, whose smile seemed surgically perfected, directed Elara to the waiting area. Even her voice was impeccably modulated. The waiting room was less a room and more a curated exhibition of corporate success. Plush, charcoal-gray sofas were arranged around a low, glass-top table displaying art books with titles Elara couldn't pronounce. Scattered across these luxurious seats were the other candidates. A woman with a razor-sharp bob and a suit the color of a stormy sky tapped impatiently on a tablet. A man, whose watch alone probably cost more than Alara's annual rent, adjusted his silk tie with an air of practiced nonchalance. Their shoes, she noticed, were all gleaming, unblemished leather, a stark contrast to the scuffed but polished pair peeking out from under her own practical skirt. A wave of inadequacy threatened to engulf her, but Alara straightened her shoulders. She might not look the part, but she had earned her place here, just like them. Her worn shoes had carried her further than any luxury car. She found an unoccupied corner, away from the hum of their hushed conversations, and took a seat, her gaze steady, her resolve hardening. Whispers and giggles. The waiting room hummed with a nervous energy, a soft murmur of hushed conversations and rustling papers. Alara sat on the edge of a plush armchair, her worn satchel clutched in her lap, trying to focus on the notes she diligently prepared. The air, thick with the scent of polished wood and expensive perfume, felt alien to her. She smoothed the fabric of her simple dress, a familiar gesture that usually calmed her, but today her heart fluttered like a trapped bird. A sudden, sharp giggle pierced the quiet. Alara's head snapped up, her eyes drawn to two impeccably dressed young women across the room. One, with perfectly coiffed blonde hair, nudged her companion, her manicured fingers subtly pointing. The other, dark-haired and smirking, leaned in, their heads almost touching as they whispered furiously. Alara didn't need to hear their words to know she was the subject of their amusement. Their gazes, sharp and dismissive, drifted down, lingering pointedly on her feet. A blush, hot and unwelcome, crept up Alara's neck, burning her cheeks. Her gaze involuntarily dropped to her own shoes. They weren't new, not by a long shot. The leather, once a rich brown, was now faded and scuffed in places, the laces a little frayed. She'd polished them until her fingers ached, but time and countless miles had left their indelible mark. A wave of shame, cold and insistent, washed over her. These shoes, her only good pair, suddenly felt like a glaring testament to everything she lacked. A familiar voice, firm and unwavering, echoed in her mind, her grandmother's. "It's not the clothes you wear, child, but the spirit within that shines brightest." Alara took a slow, deep breath, the scent of expensive perfume momentarily forgotten. This wasn't about her shoes. It wasn't about their judgment. It was about the opportunity that lay beyond this room, about the passion burning within her for sustainable urban development, about the countless hours she'd spent studying, researching, dreaming. She lifted her chin, her gaze meeting theirs without flinching. The blonde girl quickly averted her eyes, a flicker of surprise crossing her face. The dark-haired one, though still smirking, seemed to lose a fraction of her earlier bravado. Alara's breath hitched, then steadied. She was here for a reason, a purpose far grander than their petty judgments. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, picturing the intricate designs for green spaces she'd painstakingly crafted, the innovative waste management solutions she'd devised. When she opened them again, her resolve was a solid, unbreakable thing. Let them giggle. She had a future to build. The passionate pitch. The massive oak door groaned open, releasing a breath of lemon polish and Alara's own nervous anticipation. Three impassive faces rose from behind a polished conference table, their expressions a testament to the gravity of the occasion. Alara offered a small, confident smile, settling into the offered seat and carefully positioning her portfolio on the gleaming surface. The air crackled with unspoken expectations. "Ms. Vance," the central figure began, her voice a crisp prelude, "enlighten us as to why you believe you are the ideal candidate for stellar innovations." This was it. Alara drew a steadying breath, her inherent shyness dissolving under the fierce heat of her conviction. "Stellar innovation stands at a critical juncture," she declared, her voice clear and resonant, "and I am confident my vision for Project Nightingale perfectly aligns with your ambitious trajectory." She leaned forward, eyes sparkling with zeal. "Envision a system capable of not only forecasting market shifts with 90% accuracy but also proactively identifying nascent consumer demands before they're even articulated. My proposal outlines a multi-layered AI framework, harnessing predictive analytics and a proprietary data synthesis algorithm I've been developing. Her gestures were animated, weaving a tapestry of streamlined efficiency and unparalleled growth. She elaborated on her algorithm, detailing its intricacies, its ethical safeguards, and its revolutionary potential to reshape their product development cycle. The room, initially rigid, seemed to thaw, a flicker of genuine curiosity igniting in the interviewer's eyes. She observed a brief, almost imperceptible nod from the man on the right, his brow deeply furrowed in concentration. Then, she caught it, a quick, almost furtive glance from the woman, directed downwards. It was swift, yet unmistakable. Elara's heart gave a tiny, involuntary leap. Her shoes. Her faithful, albeit undeniably scuffed and worn, interview shoes. A faint blush warmed her cheeks, but she suppressed it, refusing to let the momentary sting derail her. She pressed on, her voice unwavering. This transcends mere data, it's about deciphering the human element beneath the numbers. My algorithm discerns not just patterns, but motivations. It can predict not only what people desire, but the underlying why behind that desire. As she spoke, she noticed the woman's gaze drift again, a fleeting downward flick, then back to Elara's face, a thinly veiled judgment in her eyes. Elara's resolve solidified. She would not allow a pair of shoes to eclipse years of relentless dedication and countless sleepless nights. She was more than her footwear. She was her ideas. My objective, Elara concluded, her voice ringing with newfound authority, is to not simply integrate technology, but to seamlessly weave it into the very fabric of Stellar's future, forging a synergy that is both groundbreaking and profoundly human-centric. She finished, her gaze sweeping across their faces, a blend of challenge and promise in her eyes. The ensuing silence was thick, heavy with anticipation. An observant CEO. The executive floor, typically a sanctuary of measured calm, thrummed today with a subtle current of apprehension emanating from the interview suites. Ms. Albright's sensible heels clicked a precise rhythm against the polished marble as she moved down the corridor, a counterpoint to the distant, rising murmur of voices. Her gaze, sharp and analytical, swept across the glass panels, catching a candidate's animated hand gesture, a panelist's considered nod. She wasn't merely observing, she was dissecting. In room 3, a young woman sat, spine erect, hands loosely intertwined in her lap. Elara Vance. Ms. Albright recalled the unusual arc of her resume, the sparse yet potent experience that had initially piqued her interest. Now, witnessing her in person, a fresh impression solidified. The interviewers, two senior managers renowned for their rigorous, almost intimidating approach, leaned back, their expressions a familiar cocktail of skepticism and mild condescension. Elara, however, met their scrutiny with unwavering intensity. Her striking hazel eyes weren't fixed on their faces, but rather on a point just beyond, as if conceptualizing the solution to an invisible problem. A faint flush graced her cheeks, not from embarrassment, but from the fierce glow of concentration, a mind fully engaged. Ms. Albright paused, her hand lightly grazing the cold brass of a door handle. She noticed the worn edges of Elara's shoes, a detail an HR junior had casually, and somewhat disparagingly, mentioned. But Ms. Albright perceived not destitution, but resilience. A quiet defiance. Elara wasn't attempting to dazzle with superficial polish, she was here to contribute. Her answers, though muffled by the soundproofing, seemed delivered with a quiet conviction, punctuated by thoughtful pauses. The panel, usually adept at unsettling candidates, appeared unable to breach her composure. A flicker of genuine curiosity ignited within Ms. Albright. This was no meticulously rehearsed performance. This was raw intellect, tempered by an understated strength. It was rare. It was invaluable. Continuing her walk, she reached her office, Elara's focused gaze etched into her memory. Sarah, Ms. Albright's voice, crisp and clear, sliced through the silence of her assistant's desk. Please compile comprehensive profiles for all project lead finalists. Specifically, I need an in-depth analysis of Elara Vance's background. Everything. And arrange for me to access the full interview recordings, beginning with her session. Sarah, accustomed to her CEO's often cryptic but always astute directives, simply nodded, already opening a new file on her screen. Ms. Albright turned to her window, overlooking the bustling city. She harbored a strong intuition about Elara Vance. A very strong intuition indeed. The CEO's address. The hushed anticipation in the cavernous auditorium was almost a physical presence. 40 figures, each a testament to ambition and perseverance, sat in rows of plush, dark blue seats. Elara Vance found a spot near the back, her worn shoes tucked discreetly beneath the chair. The air hummed with a mixture of excitement and trepidation, a symphony of unspoken hopes. Every polished surface reflected the cool, clinical glow of the overhead lights. A side door swung open, and Ms. Albright strode onto the stage. Her presence was immediate, commanding. The ripple of whispers ceased as her gaze swept across the assembled candidates. It was a look that seemed to dissect, to peel back layers, and for a fleeting moment, it snagged on Elara. A flicker of something unreadable passed through Ms. Albright's eyes before she continued her survey, acknowledging each person with an almost imperceptible nod. She stood at the podium, a stark figure in her impeccably tailored charcoal suit. "Good morning," her voice, clear and resonant, filled the space without needing to be loud. "You represent the final selection from thousands. A remarkable achievement, each of you." A pause, allowing the words to settle. But the journey isn't over. Not yet. Elara felt a familiar knot tighten in her stomach. This was it. The final hurdle. She subtly straightened her shoulders, a small act of defiance against the self-doubt that often tried to creep in. Ms. Albright's eyes, keen and intelligent, settled back on the room. "We look for a specific kind of individual here at Albright Innovations. Many companies prioritize outward presentation, a polished veneer. And while professionalism is important, it is not our ultimate measure." Her words, deliberate and weighty, hung in the air. "We seek courage. The courage to stand by your convictions, even when unpopular. We seek resilience. The unwavering ability to rise after every fall, to learn, to adapt, to innovate." She leaned slightly into the microphone, her voice dropping a fraction, yet losing none of its intensity. "And most importantly, we seek passion. A genuine, unyielding drive to create, to improve, to leave a mark. Not for accolades, but for the inherent satisfaction of a job done with heart and soul. We want someone who sees problems not as obstacles, but as opportunities for ingenious solutions. Someone whose internal compass points true, regardless of external pressures or fleeting trends." Ms. Albright's gaze, sharp and unwavering, swept over the faces again, lingering fractionally on Elara's. "The person we choose will be a foundational pillar of this company's future. They will be someone who understands that true value lies not in what you appear to be, but in who you truly are, and what you are genuinely capable of achieving." The unspoken challenge in her words was palpable. The air crackled with a new kind of tension, one born of profound introspection. A shared story. Ms. Albright leaned back, her gaze softening, losing some of its customary laser-like intensity. The sterile gleam of the executive boardroom seemed to dim slightly as she spoke, her voice dropping to a lower, more intimate register. "I started out," she began, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on her lips, "in a town so small, the biggest event of the year was the county fair. My parents worked tirelessly, but resources were scarce. Every penny counted, every stitch mended." Elara, who had braced herself for another pointed question about market strategy or quarterly projections, found herself completely disarmed. She watched, captivated, as Ms. Albright continued, a quiet strength emanating from her. "When I got my first big interview, for an entry-level position at a modest firm in the city, I remember staring at my shoes. They were my best pair, but best was a relative term. The soles were thin, and the leather, despite countless polishes, had long lost its original sheen. There was a small, almost imperceptible tear near the toe of the right one. A faint flush crept up Alara's neck. The memory of her own scuffed loafers, the ones she'd so carefully selected for her interview, echoed in the stillness of the room. She'd tried to buff out the deepest marks, but some imperfections, like certain judgments, were simply too ingrained to erase. "I could have borrowed a pair, perhaps," Ms. Albright mused, her eyes distant, but something in me refused. Those shoes represented every mile I'd walked, every obstacle I'd overcome to even get to that interview. They were a testament to my journey, not a flaw to be hidden. She paused, her gaze settling back on Alara, warm and direct. I walked into that office with my head held high, those worn shoes carrying me forward. And I got the job. Not despite the shoes, I believe, but partly because of the story they told. Alara felt a sudden, profound shift. The knot of self-consciousness that had tightened around her chest since the initial interview began to unravel. It wasn't just about the shared experience of humble beginnings, it was the shared understanding of what those beginnings instilled. Resilience. Resourcefulness. A deep, unshakable drive. Ms. Albright wasn't just telling a story, she was offering a mirror, reflecting Alara's own unvoiced struggles and triumphs. A flicker of hope, bright and tenacious, ignited within Alara, illuminating the path ahead. The sterile boardroom no longer felt cold, it felt like a space where a different kind of strength was not just understood, but valued. The announcement. A profound stillness, pregnant with expectation, settled over the grand hall. The air, usually a tapestry of muted chatter and rustling silk, now vibrated with raw anticipation. Ms. Albright, a statuesque figure at the podium, surveyed the sea of impeccably tailored finalists. Each face, a carefully constructed facade of calm, barely concealed a frantic pulse. She clutched a single, unadorned envelope, a stark counterpoint to the room's lavish decor. The mingled scents of polished mahogany and expensive perfume were underscored by the faint, metallic tang of shared anxiety. Her voice, when it finally broke the quiet, was a crisp, clear chime. The selection process for this year's Future Innovator program has been, as always, exceptionally rigorous. We have seen brilliance, dedication, and ingenuity in abundance. Her discerning eyes lingered for an extra beat on Alara, who stood near the back, her well-worn but meticulously clean shoes a silent testament to her journey. Alara's heart thrummed a frantic rhythm against her ribs, a counterpoint to the quiet hope she clung to. She'd managed to ignore the subtle sideward glances, the barely concealed smirks aimed at her modest attire during the initial rounds, focusing instead on Ms. Albright's steady gaze, a silent acknowledgement she'd felt throughout the grueling interviews. A collective breath hung suspended, then exhaled in a soft sigh as Ms. Albright finally unsealed the envelope. The paper's rustle seemed amplified in the sudden quiet. She read the name to herself, her expression inscrutable. Then, she lifted her head, her gaze unerringly finding Alara. "Alara, please step forward." The words resonated, a bell tolling through the stunned silence. A ripple of collective gasps spread through the room. Whispers, like a sudden swarm of agitated bees, erupted almost instantly. Alara felt a jolt, a surge of adrenaline mingling with disbelief. She hadn't dared to truly hope, not after the subtle slights, the dismissive looks. Yet, here it was. Her name. With a quiet resolve blooming in her chest, Alara navigated the throng of bewildered finalists. Her scuffed but resolute shoes carried her forward. She met Ms. Albright's gaze, a flicker of something akin to pride igniting within her. As she moved, the murmurs intensified, a chorus of surprise and thinly veiled resentment. But Alara, for the first time, did not shrink. A small, proud smile touched her lips. She had been seen. She had been chosen. And her worth, she realized, transcended the fabric of her coat or the condition of her shoes. A bright future ahead. Ms. Albright's hand, surprisingly warm and firm, enveloped Alara's. "Congratulations, Alara. Welcome to the team." Her smile, though subtle, reached her shrewd eyes, softening the usual intensity. A ripple of murmuring spread through the room, a mix of surprise and grudging admiration. Elara felt a blush creep up her neck, but it was quickly overshadowed by a surge of pure, unadulterated relief and joy. "Thank you, Ms. Albright," Elara managed, her voice a little breathy. I won't let you down." Ms. Albright turned to face the assembled finalists, her gaze sweeping over them, instantly commanding silence. "I understand some of you may be surprised by my decision today," she began, her voice carrying a calm authority that brooked no argument. "Many of you presented impeccable resumes, polished presentations, and, frankly, looked the part." A pointed glance at a few particularly preened individuals left no doubt as to her meaning. "However," she continued, her voice gaining a quiet power, "this company values innovation, determination, and genuine spirit above all else. Elara Vance came to us with ideas that were not just innovative, but deeply considered and practical. She demonstrated a tenacity, a refusal to be intimidated, that frankly, few of you possessed. Her vision for the future of our marketing department wasn't just a regurgitation of textbook strategies, it was a living, breathing blueprint for growth." Elara's heart swelled with a pride so profound it brought tears to her eyes. Ms. Albright wasn't just offering her a job, she was validating every late night, every doubt overcome, every moment she'd fought to prove her worth. "And yes, Ms. Albright added, her eyes briefly meeting Elara's, a knowing glint within them, "some of you might have noticed her shoes." A collective intake of breath filled the room. Elara instinctively glanced down at her scuffed, yet still sturdy, sensible pumps. "Those shoes," Ms. Albright declared, her voice ringing with conviction, "are a testament. A testament to hard work, to practicality, to someone who knows the value of effort and doesn't confuse superficial polish with true substance. They tell a story of resilience, of a journey overcome, of feet that have walked a path of honest endeavor. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the kind of character we seek here. That is the kind of character that builds a future." Elara felt a profound sense of affirmation wash over her. The shoes, once a source of acute embarrassment, now felt like a badge of honor. They weren't just worn, they were earned. Each scuff mark, each slightly frayed edge, was a silent witness to her journey, a testament to the miles she'd walked to reach this very moment. Looking at them now, they no longer felt like a symbol of what she lacked, but a powerful emblem of her strength, her persistence, and the bright, undeniable future stretching out before her. A quiet confidence bloomed within her. She was ready.